Welcome to the Wonder of WOOO podcast, where we highlight how businesses can scale profitably by serving others well. I'm Daryl Zavadny.
And I'm Ed Howie.
And this is
the Wonder of WOOO. If you're a business owner investing time, money, and marketing only to be frustrated by losing customers, then this podcast is for you.
You know, Ed, the Wonder of WOOO podcast really does celebrate the rewards of serving others well in business and in life. We talk about it all the time. It's not just good business. It doesn't just feel good. It's good business, right?
It feels good, and it's good business. It's good business, and it feels good. And that's a pretty powerful combination.
Right. As we get started, we tend to do this just to calibrate and level set.
Right.
What is WOOO for the benefit of our community? If you're joining us for the first time, Ed, what is WOOO and how does it relate to business and life? And what are we talking about?
We probably heard woo and it's kind of like woo, and that is part of it. But WOOO with 3 O's stands for winning others over and over, winning others over and over. The logic, as we both know, is that it does take intention to win others over, to make that first impression, to be appreciative for that first customer, that first guest, that first date, that kind of thing. But the long game of intentionally serving others well, of winning others over and over, it has to be intentional, it has to be deliberate, and there's some processes you can put in place to make the probability of it happening much higher, which is good for the person receiving as well as for you.
Sure. Yeah, and the mechanics of it are, it can be as simple or as complicated as one wants to make it. But, you know, in essence, though, it's about intentionality and discipline and execution. And so today, Ed, we're talking about something specific, WOOO in the service industry.
WOOO in the service industry.
So how is WOOO important in the service industry? It seems kind of, one might expect, well, this is probably pretty relevant, but let's talk about, specific to this industry, why WOOO matters.
So, Daryl, let's start off by defining what we talk about service industry. What is the service industry?
Yeah, it's a great question. As we were kind of getting set before filming today, we even said, well, what about this? Is it a retailer? Is it service?
So if you think about it, actually, who is not in the service industry?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, if you're a commodity, if you're just a transaction, you're in a service industry. And as we know, I mean, we were here to celebrate, but we're also here to be real too. There are people in all kinds of industries that have a service component of their business, but they're not fully leaning into it.
Right.
Because what happens is those, no matter the industry, that lean into taking care of their customers well, they stand out. And I think that's really what we're talking about. Service industry typically is defined as more of a consumer transaction, is more that you are doing something for someone versus just selling a product. However, the lines are blurred. Would you say that Amazon is a service industry?
Yeah, they came to mind first when we first started talking about that.
That's right.
Well, geez, Amazon trades a good or service, or rather they trade a good for dollars, but there's definitely a service element to that. So I think it's fair to say every business is in the service industry. It's just really a question of levels of the amount that service represents as your total product.
That's exactly right. And to me, when I think of service industry, it tends to rise and fall ultimately on the interaction between human and human, person and person.
Right.
Whether it be, frankly, a CPA, service industry,
right?
A travel agent, service industry. You could look at someone accountants, but also like a roofing company. Mm-hmm. You're selling roofing, but the service is that you're going to protect my house and the way you do it. So I think the service is really broad. What I love is that when we were talking about what is a brand that would be worthy of exploring, but also inspirational, we both came up with what?
Yeah,
discount tires. Yeah. I mean, if you don't have a discount tire in your market, I'm so sorry. Yeah. I mean, now I'm going to tell you a quick story about tires. Mm-hmm. And Catherine and I were newly married, and we were about probably 5 months into marriage. And, we had that salary that just barely covered the apartment rent and food and maybe 2 meals out a month.
Yeah.
And we were going to go away. We were going to drive up to North Georgia to Rome, and with some friends, and we were going to spend the weekend. Mm-hmm. And then what happened? We had a flat
tire. Yeah.
Flat tire. The flat tire hit on Thursday night driving home from the office. And, when you have one flat tire and your tires are worn, what happens? You got to buy how many?
4 of them.
You got to buy 4 flat tires. Yeah. 4 flat tires were not in the Howie budget at that time.
Right.
And while I had bought tires before in college for the car, it was just hit differently, because what happened is, we talked about trade-offs. It was go for the weekend in the other car, or have 2 cars by buying 4 tires.
Right.
So my first adulting experience where the joy of tires were stripped from my life, it really was, it didn't set up my relationship with buying tires really good, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know if anyone looks forward to buying tires, but I sure don't.
Right.
But let's break that down. One is, it's typically an unexpected expense.
Mm-hmm.
Second is typically an unplanned event.
Right.
You hit the curb, you drive over something. And then third is, you really kind of don't have a choice to replace it.
Right.
Because you either have a car that moves or a car that doesn't, right?
Yeah.
So what amazed me about us talking about Discount Tire is that they are teed up to be a source of really disdain.
Mm-hmm.
Because who wants to buy tires?
Right.
However, I think your experience is a little different, right?
Yeah.
Not that you wanted to,
Right.
but the way, the experience, the service that you experienced. Tell me more about your experience with Discount Tire.
Yeah. It's funny. This past week, we had 2 flat tires.
Two different cars?
2 different vehicles.
Does that mean you get to buy 8 tires?
Mercifully, I only bought 4.
Okay, good.
On the one, there was a flat repair, but to your point, it wasn't expected. We needed to have it resolved so that we had an ability to get around. And I all of a sudden was teed up and positioned to be like, oh, what am I got to solve this because I don't have margin in my life for this. So I walk into my neighborhood Discount Tire, from whom I've bought tires before, and I was greeted by registers that were full of staff who were attentive and said, "Sir, I can get you over here." Somebody who led with empathy and said, "Boy, that stinks. Let me take a look at it with you." And then some, and they resolved it quickly. And they did they do a free flat repair. Right. And so it's this service that they don't have to do that. But they're wise in doing that, and they know that either they're going to win on that tire because that flat repair doesn't hold, or they're going to win in terms of ingratiation, and then I'm going to come back and say, "My gosh, you guys took care of me. You inflate the tires to the correct pressure. You took good care of me as I am trying to take care of my family, my children, my wife with the vehicles." I'm going to come back there over and over. So one vehicle, I go in, and the flat repair, attentive staff, full registers, great, empathy. They patch it, drive away, and it doesn't hold. And I think, here we go. The other one, it did hold, incidentally. But I went back, and the interesting thing is, on the one that I needed to buy the 4 tires on, I don't want to say I gladly did it, but it might have been a little bit different than your experience with Catherine,
right?
Where I thought, man, these guys, they've earned my business because they have provided something over and above what I expected in a difficult circumstance.
So when you had to purchase, when the choice of purchase, it sounds like you didn't consider anyone else other than Discount Tire.
Not at all. Yeah, exactly.
Isn't that what we want? I mean, we want our customers to see us as their only solution and to never introduce another brand into the decision set.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing in the service industry. And this is, to me, maybe, and again, if we're calibrating on the fact that we're all at some level in the service industry, that really any brand it's really not a unicorn. Like what we're doing in service, be it food or in this case, replacing tires or paint or tax prep or legal services. I don't want to call it a commodity, but it can skew that way, right? Because it's a way of meeting a need for the customer.
Well, I think a key point on commodity, because we think of oil and gas, I always come back to the fact that when you're a commodity, basically your enterprise is interchangeable with someone else's.
Right.
That there's no compelling reason why, or the compelling reason is not known of why I as a customer should choose this brand versus this.
Right. So I think that, this is an important thing that we're kind of sort of leading toward is, all right, so there's a distinction in the discount tire experience.
There is.
Let's talk about the principles that, leader, you can extract to apply to your business and say, well, what do we learn in a discount tire kind of experience? What's the delta between a commodity, something that is really just, it goes to the lowest common denominator, which is price and function. You meet my need, and it's as cheap as possible. So how do we take our opportunity, our business, from commodity to distinct brand? Let's talk about that for the benefit of our community.
And so if you subscribe, if you will, to our framework, that the ultimate brand experience is an intersection of the experience, the transaction, the delivery of goods and services, the function of the relationship, and then the impact, experience and impact, the impact you have in your lives. You described rather emotionally how they impacted you versus the fact that they just replaced your tire. Okay. So if my CPA just does my taxes, I give them the information and I get it back, and it's just a completed tax return.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Functionally did the job.
Maybe a nice email back and forth, but you know what I mean?
You're saying the same as tires, right?
That's exactly right.
Tire is the product. It's a widget.
Yes. And so what I find is a commonality with what I want to share about my discount tire story, and I've got several, happily, sadly, but is that I also had a conversation with two operations leaders from Discount Tires on a plane recently.
Yeah.
Imagine that. I talked to someone on an airplane.
Yeah.
And they're very methodical about what they do. Because so two things. One is, one of the best things you can do to woo your customers is to remove the nuisance, to remove the friction, to remove the pain point.
Right.
To look at what you're doing for your customer, not only as what is the good that you're doing, but what is the bad you're taking away. Mm-hmm. And so what are the two things they do? They do free air checks where you can literally pull in at any time and they will stop what they're doing and come out and check your tires to see if your air is right. Now, we live in Texas, and are those things that come something, or there's tire sensors.
Yeah.
The first time it goes below 60 degrees after 100-degree weather, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Is you're going to have a low tire deal. Mm-hmm. It's not really, right? And I can't explain the physics of it.
Yeah.
But you got to imagine they're just crowded when that happens.
Right.
At any time you can pull into a Discount Tire and they do a free air check. Mm-hmm. How many times have you had to hunt for a convenience store? I mean, I love Quick Trip, but their air gauges only work their air still seem to work half the time. Mm-hmm. There's a quarter jammed in, whatever. They're saying, hey, we're going to check it. And if it's low, what do?
Yeah.
They fill it up.
Congratulations. Yeah, we'll fill it up.
How much does air cost?
Right.
I mean, now let's take on the operator hat. Well, aren't you taking that labor dollar away from replacing a tire or selling $1,000 worth of tire to give your customer something free? Mm-hmm. Yes and no. You are taking away from that, but what you're doing is you're creating a lifelong customer,
right? Because
you are serving the needs not only of the delivery of the product, but you're removing the nuisance.
Right.
Let me tell you a quick story about Discount Tire.
I want to hear your story.
Okay, so again, planned event, never. I was driving from the office to go work out, and let's just say I was not paying attention very well. I was not texting,
right?
But my brain was just not in place. It was some other place, okay? Yeah. And there's a place just north of here where you go around the curve and you approach a railroad track, and then there's a stoplight. So it's kind of awkward. And on the curve, there's actually a driveway. And I looked at it afterwards because I was like, how badly was I not paying attention? Well, when the curb breaks for the driveway and the curb returns, it's not quite like on the perfect curve of the line. It does stick out a little bit. That's my story. I'm sticking with it. Anyway,
Catherine, if you're watching.
Exactly. I mean, and the tow truck driver did agree with me. Right. That is awkward.
Yeah.
And there was a bunch of tire marks there before me. But anyway, so I hit the corner of the curb, and it not only popped one tire, it popped both tires.
Well done.
Yeah, I was so excited, And so I was able to get into the next parking lot. And thankfully I have AAA. And when I realized it was both, I was like, okay, if it was one, I would have changed it.
Sure.
But two, it's like, that ain't going to help.
But yeah.
So I called AAA, and they went through and they gave me options. They said, well, it's a little further. You'll have to pay a little more. It's right outside the range, but there's a discount tire if you want to take it there. I was like, take a discount tire.
Right.
I didn't even consider anywhere else.
Yeah.
All right. I had to pay extra, but we did a discount tire. It's now 6:20, 6:30 by the time the cool record driver, tow truck driver gets it up on the bed, and we're heading out, and he goes, they're going to be closed. He said, but what I'll do is I will find the best place to leave your car so it's protected under a light, whatever, and they will take care of it first thing in the morning. I'm like, you know what? Cool. So I was going to get there, drop the car, call Uber. We get there. It's like, there's somebody in the store. Now we're like at 6:50 and they close at 6, I believe. And I'm like, I said, you see that guy? He said, yeah. And he said, well, let me drive around the building and see if there's a better place. We drive around the building and there's like a little side door. The side door is up.
Okay.
All right. They're actually helping someone in a camper who apparently had a crisis, traveling one.
Sure.
And it's now we're going like 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
I jumped out and said, hey, where's the best place to leave our car? I can't believe y'all are still here.
Yeah.
Should we leave it on the side lot or the front? He said, oh, you don't have to leave it out there. Have them pull around front and come with me. So he took me in the back door. The guy took me to the register and said, okay, so let's see what we got for you. And so he looked at my car. He got the numbers. I was like, is it okay for you to do this? He said, oh, yeah, man, we're here. And we take care of customers when we're here.
That's awesome.
So what happened is they not only found the tires, they were going to have to bring them in the morning. They opened up the front garage door and secured my car inside.
Wow.
I was flying out the next morning. I left my keys, Ubered. They called me at 10:30 the next morning. It was taken care of. They asked when I'd want to pick it up. Did they need to secure it the next night, or was I going to send someone for it? We got it. And here's the deal. My tires were under warranty.
Oh, wow. All of that.
I had to replace all 4 for the right proper balancing.
Right.
I only paid for the 2 that were not damaged because the other 2 were under warranty.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. And so let's break that down. What's the commonality?
Yeah.
Is I could have bought the tires at, name them. We won't, but name all the places I could have bought the tires. You know them.
Yeah.
They're not bad brands.
Right.
But my lifelong loyalty is to Discount Tires because they not only provide the product and deliver the product in the way it's needed, they not only do it like nicely and kindly and pleasantly and proactively.
Right.
They remove the friction points that typically are associated with the transaction.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things that Discount Tires is a great example of is we look at all the things we can do for our customers. I think Discount Tire has mastered the art of what are all the things that we can keep our customers from having to do that are associated ancillary to the overall purpose of their business.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. You started this episode by saying, if you don't have a Discount Tire near you, I'm sorry.
Right.
And it's things like that, the guy sticking around at 650 or the extra service the next day, or even, they've got an app that keeps me updated of where the vehicle is in the service process.
Oh, yeah.
It's in the bay. It's, whatever. And also,
like Domino's Pizza.
Right. All of that, it is. But all of that is empathetically removing friction for our exchange.
Oh, yeah.
And all of a sudden, I think, this is magnificent. One quick story, and then I think it'd be important to land the plane for the benefit of our community on, okay, well, so here's the application.
Yeah.
I actually drove there with one of the flats this past week, and it was Sunday. And I thought, you don't look that busy. Turns out they're closed on Sunday.
Really?
And I pulled in and I thought, I guess I'm not going to. So I had a decision to make, Ed, just like you did with the tow truck, that I thought I could go solve this now someplace else. And I didn't. I actually just said, that's fine. I'll come back tomorrow. And so it is interesting that they have built such a loyalty and an equity with me, with essentially a commodity. I needed to solve a problem,
Right.
and I was willing to forego doing it a day so that I could have it done there. And it's the same thing that you've done to say, I'm gonna pass some other places and solve it right there. So how, for the benefit of our community, Ed, you've talked about some things in terms of how to remove friction and all of that. Whether you own a tax prep firm, whether you are an attorney, a house painter, an insurance salesperson, this has great application to you. It also has application even if you're in the retail industry, because you have a service component. What maybe final words do you have in terms of removing that friction, creating process, and the application for service?
I think it comes back to one of our fundamental principles, and that is sell the reward, not the product. I mean, I could have bought the product anywhere. You could have bought the product on Sunday and had it all taken care of.
Right.
I don't know if I paid more or less for the tires. I know that by not paying for two of them, it was a net win because I would have to pay for. But before that, I was not even considering price at the point. And here's an interesting branding concept. They're called discount tire. When you hear discount, you're typically, I think you think I'm going to get the lowest common denominator experience. It's a pretty powerful brand positioning when you promote the value and affordability of what you do, but then you over-index on the service, because what you're doing is you're like exponentializing the overall value, because I don't feel like I'm overpaying, or I don't feel like even with your incredible service that I'm paying for it. Is I feel like I'm getting a great deal and more. And that is one of the best ways to truly just create and fortify those lifelong customer relationships. And what's amazing about the discount tire experience, I genuinely felt like the people, every time I've met with them, really wanted to take care of me. They really wanted to serve me well.
Right.
And I would tell you, from talking with the corporate folks, it isn't just a wish of theirs. It isn't just something that, like, maybe we'll take care of our customers. They have some extremely deliberate processes in place, from selection, from operational procedures, from expectations, from quality standards, which comes back to our formula of WOOO. To be able to woo your customers, you have to know what they want, you have to be able to do it, and you have to be able to do it over and over again, and clearly.
Yeah.
I know they're not perfect, and I know someone will be going here, that wasn't my experience.
Yeah.
That's going to happen. But I would say more people than not, I think it's safe to say, would say that discount tires serves others well.
Indeed. Business leader, we hope this episode has encouraged you, particularly as it relates to understanding how service impacts the business that you're in, that it's not a commodity. You are indeed in a brand. And it's our hope and prayer, as it is every time, that this episode encouraged you to scale business profitably by serving others well. Every time we do this, we talk about the fact that a conviction that we have, and what is that conviction?
Everyone wants WOOO.
Indeed, they do. Until next time, we look forward to spending time with you on our next episode. Thanks for being with us today. Take care.
So that's it for today's episode of The Wonder of WOOO. Head on over to Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to subscribe to our show. One lucky listener every single week who posts a review on Apple Podcasts will win a chance in the grand prize drawing to win a $25,000 value private VIP day with Daryl and me. Be sure to head on over to thewonderofwoopodcast.com and pick up a free copy of our gift. And please join us next time.